going and kept going and kept going and just didn't stop until Samantha died.
The way Samantha had died, because it was so vicious, and I just couldn't understand how a 15-year-old girl could do that.
Now, what image comes to your mind when you think of a murderer? For most people, they never imagine that a teenage girl could be capable of such a horrifying crime. So when a teen mom was brutally murdered, her family would never have believed that the perpetrator was actually a 15-year-old girl. Let's look into the case of the 15-year-old who killed a teen mom and got released from jail just to go back again 6 months later. Samantha Madigan was born in Wallsend, England in 1989. She was the middle child of Allison and Stan Madigan and had an older brother Lee and a younger sister Carly. According to Allison, Samantha was beautiful from day one. She was energetic, outgoing, friendly, and always ready to help those around her. Samantha was also super popular in school and was liked by everyone, including her teachers and classmates. She was described as a good listener, always positive, and willing to uplift those who were down. Her sister Carly said that Samantha would always look out for her and make sure that she was okay. Samantha wanted to be a model and had even booked herself in a local modeling agency. However, when she was 18, her life took an unexpected turn when she got pregnant. At first, this totally scared her and she didn't know what to do. But according to her family and friends, Samantha soon embraced her situation and was even excited about becoming a new mom. In the documentary Britain's Deadliest Kids, Samantha's sister Carly said that Samantha was going to all her doctor's appointments and sharing her ultrasound images with everyone who was willing to see.
And I remember she would let us feel the baby kick, and you could just see that excitement in her face, and she was always smiling about it.
But around this time, Samantha's mom, Allison, started having some really disturbing premonitions that something bad was about to happen.
It was such a weird feeling. I used to say to my friends at work, I'm sure she's going to die giving birth, because I had this horrible gut feeling all the time. I used to think that always had this horrible feeling something bad was going to happen.
In May 2007, Samantha got her baby safely, and she named him Callum. But then, on August 2nd, 10 weeks after her son was born, Samantha decided to take a break and go out with her friends for a while. Sadly, that was the last time her family would ever see her alive again. That day, Samantha left her son in the care of her sister and went to the beach with her friends. They stayed there until early in the evening when Samantha decided to drop by her house and check on her son.
She came back to check on Callum and to check on me, and I hadn't done his bottle on time. So it was when she walked in, he was actually crying, and but I was waiting for the bottle to cool down, and she actually told us off.
According to Carly, Samantha wanted to cancel her plans and stay in with her son, but Carly encouraged her to go out with her friends, saying that she would look after Callum. So Samantha and her friends headed out to another friend's house for some drinks. Around 11:30 p.m., the group decided that it was time to go home. And since most of them lived in the area, they decided to walk. They had only gone for a short distance when they came across a group of 4 men. One of Samantha's friends allegedly made a comment about one of the guys, which the strangers found offensive. And when Samantha and her friends were about to reach Samantha's home, 2 of the men from before came out of a nearby apartment building and confronted them. A fight soon broke out between the 2 men and Samantha's friends. Samantha jumped in and tried to break up the fight, but then someone started attacking her with a knife. She tried pushing the person off of her, but the attacker seemed to be in a murderous rage and kept going until Samantha fell on the ground, motionless.
It wasn't just an attack where she Samantha once, so she just kept going and kept going and kept going, and just didn't stop until Samantha died.
The 3 strangers then ran off, leaving Samantha on the ground, fighting for her life. Samantha's friends were in a panic. They immediately called for an ambulance and went to tell her family what had happened. The paramedics tried everything they could to save Samantha, but it was already too late. Samantha was gone. When Samantha's family got the news, they were completely horrified and immediately rushed to the hospital thinking that Samantha was alive. Samantha's mother, Allison, said in Britain's Deadliest Kids that she thought it was a mistake because she couldn't imagine her daughter in a situation where someone would want to hurt her. But as soon as they reached the hospital, the seriousness of the situation hit her. The family was not told about Samantha being dead, and they were only allowed to see her through a glass screen. Her mom would later remember banging on the glass, trying to get her to wake up, but Samantha never moved. When they were finally allowed into the room the next day, Carly said she debated with herself whether to go in and see her sister or not. Eventually, she decided to go in and see her, but regretted the decision soon after, because the image haunted her for days.
And I always remember thinking, do I really want to see her? But we did, and we went in, and that was my last memory of Samantha. I wish I hadn't have seen her, because I think in the early days it always haunted us. That picture of her.
According to the autopsy report, Samantha had over 43 separate injuries. Among them, 10 jab wounds in her face, arms, and chest. The fatal wound had gone through the chest and severed a major artery near her heart. During Samantha's funeral, which was attended by over 700 people, her family talked about Samantha's son, Callum, who only got to meet his mom for a short while before she was cruelly taken away from him. They promised to always tell of the amazing and compassionate person his mother was. Meanwhile, investigators were working around the clock, trying to find the monster behind the attack. They had managed to arrest a guy who was part of the group that had confronted Samantha and her friends. But when they interrogated him, they were shocked to learn that the perpetrator they were looking for was actually a 15-year-old girl by the name of Jordan Jobson. Samantha's family also did not expect their daughter's killer to be someone so young.
Which I found very, very hard to believe, especially because of the way Samantha had died, because it was so vicious and I just couldn't understand how a 15-year-old girl could do that.
There's not much information about Jordan other than she grew up in a neighboring town called Walker and was a pretty normal kid until she started hanging out with the wrong crowd. She got into drinking and using illegal substances in her early teens and was kicked out of school for always skipping class. She soon became addicted to the white powder and started dating a much older boyfriend who was also an addict and would buy the stuff for her. As it turned out, the man the police had arrested was Jordan's boyfriend. Jordan later turned herself in and admitted to attacking Samantha, but she said that she could not really remember anything about the attack because she had taken several beers, vodka, and narcotics. She, however, claimed that she didn't mean to hurt Samantha and that she was only trying to push her away from her boyfriend. When she was asked why she had the knife with her, she claimed that she carried it because she was afraid. She later told the police where she had disposed of the knife after the attack, and the police were able to retrieve and use it as evidence. At the start of her trial, Jordan wanted to plead guilty for manslaughter, but the prosecution rejected this and charged her with murder. Samantha's family came face to face with Jordan for the first time in court and were disturbed by how emotionless she seemed.
She sat as if she was just on a shoplifting charge. She was never remorseful for anything that she'd done. She took my sister's life, she took part of our lives, and she just it was never shown.
Jordan was found guilty of the charges and sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 15 years. This was later reduced to 11 years, following 2 separate appeals. As you can imagine, Samantha's family felt like they had just been slapped in the face. And to add to this, Jordan actually almost was released on parole in 2018 after completing her minimum sentence. She had been moved to an open prison to await her release. But then, 3 months prior to her release, Jordan had been taken back to the higher security jail after she allegedly threatened another inmate. This should have been a red flag for the parole board to see that she was still a risk to the public and should not be let out. Still, they wanted to release her again in 2019 and had even started allowing her some freedom to go out on a day release unsupervised. But then, just a few days before she was due to come back before the parole board, she violated some conditions on her day release, which meant that she had to stay longer in prison. All the while, Samantha's family was fighting hard to keep Jordan locked up. They even started an organization called Samantha's Legacy to help support victims of violent crimes. They called on politicians to help tackle the growing problem of violent teenage crimes by having longer sentences imposed on perpetrators. Unfortunately, the family's efforts to keep Jordan in jail were in vain, because in December 2020, they learned that their daughter's killer was out on parole. But then 6 months later, Jordan was thrown back in prison again for violating some release condition, which has never been disclosed. In an interview, Allison talked about the roller coaster of emotion that she and her family have been going through, not knowing when Samantha's killer will be let out again. But sadly for the Madigan family, Samantha's death would not be the only tragedy that they would face. Just 12 days after Samantha was knifed to death, her uncle died in a car crash. It was later revealed that the uncle was driving home to comfort his mother, who had also received news that her brother had died at his granddaughter's wedding. And that's not even the end of tragedies that plagued the family. In 2017, 10 years after Samantha died, her brother Lee died mysteriously after undergoing a foot surgery. According to some reports, Lee injured his left foot in 2014 after falling off a roof. He lived in pain for more than 2 years before he finally decided to have the surgery. The surgeons who operated on him said that they did not find any sign of an infection in the bone, so they reconstructed his heel successfully, and he was discharged on April 5th, 2017. But then, a week later, Lee went back into the hospital in a lot of pain and was admitted. His doctor said that they decided to keep Lee in the hospital a while longer so that they could keep an eye on him. On May 20th, Lee's wound had healed and he was getting ready to be discharged when his health took a drastic turn for the worse. The doctors did not understand what was happening and they tried everything to save his life, but he died soon after. In an inquest, one of the doctors said, "I was completely shocked. I ran tests again, but nothing was coming up. We didn't have a clue what was happening. It was like his system had been hit by something."
She said, "I want to see her brains flow," and she, with all her might, hit Colleen in the head.
I knew exactly what I was doing. Everything that I did that night, I knew what I was doing.
What's your definition of evil? A tall, slender man chasing you through a dark forest? An angry teenager gunning down his schoolmates? What if I told you there was an 18-year-old girl who and killed her friend for simply being jealous of her? Let's dive into the case of the girl whose jealousy led her to torturing her friend. This story begins in West Virginia, where Krista Pike was born on March 10, 1976. For the first part of her childhood, she grew up with her grandparents. Sometimes she was easy to be around. Other times, she would be aggressive and unhappy. But there were reasons behind this. Krista's playground was her granddad's slaughterhouse, and her grandma was a devout Christian. However, she had a friend, Ernest, who continuously abused Krista throughout her childhood. But Krista was really close with her grandmother. When she died, Krista attempted to take her own life. She was 12. Throughout her teens, she would often as a way to cope with the stress. Soon enough, she was sent to live with her mom, Carissa. At the time, she was an alcoholic, and their relationship was very bumpy.
She could be so sweet and loving one day and then in trouble the next, and it was just an ongoing battle with her.
But Carissa was at fault too. She would date many men, and some of them would be very violent to Krista. This is what she said about one of her mother's exes. "He made this leather strap with a wooden handle on it specifically to beat the hell out of me with." It wasn't going well for Krista or her mom. In 1994, when Krista was 18, her mom sent her to a Job Corps, a vocational training program for troubled teens at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville.
Job Corps promised an education. She could be a nursing assistant.
Job Corps was Krista's dream come true, but not because of the career opportunities. She'd met another student, Daryl Shipp. He was 17 years old and declared himself a Satanist. Within weeks, Krista was a passionate Satanist too.
I think she sort of latched onto it because it was interesting to him.
Daryl was respected, if not feared. He protected me. He was probably the first man that I'd ever had in my life that wanted to protect me, that saw me as, you know, a treasure, something good, instead of something to use and toss to the side.
Soon, Krista's closest friends were Daryl and Shadella Peterson, who was described as a quiet girl. She seemed to have found her gang, but something put Krista off. She had become convinced that another girl, Colleen Slemmer, had an interest in Daryl and wanted to steal him from her. This was completely false. Colleen didn't want anything to do with Daryl or Krista. She was very scared of her, as Krista had begun to bully her severely. She would come into her dorm room at night and make horrifying threats to her. Colleen would call her mom and say how she really wanted to go back home.
I need to get out of here. I need to get home. I don't want to be here. I hate it. And I said, you can't. You signed a contract. You have to stay there.
Colleen's mom, May, would regret these words for the rest of her life. On January 12, 1995, Krista suggested to Colleen they go to a nearby park and smoke together, as a way of saying sorry for her behavior over the last few months. But Krista had a much darker reason for inviting Colleen out.
I wanted to get her off campus, and I had every intention of fighting her.
They met in the evening, Colleen, Krista, Daryl, and Shadella.
She didn't have a clue the danger she was in.
Indeed, Colleen was genuinely hoping they would put all of their conflicts, or Krista's conflicts, in the past. But the horror was just beginning. When the four of them started walking through a tunnel under the park, Krista started getting a feeling that something was off. She asked the group if they really had. That's when things got nasty. Krista started hitting Colleen in the face over and over again until she fell to the ground.
Krista was hitting Colleen. She was fighting back. And Colleen wanted to try to make sense of the whole thing. And she kept saying, now wait a minute, let's talk about this.
But the more Colleen would try to save herself, the angrier Krista would get. It was like she couldn't stand the thought of Colleen winning. She wanted her dead. Krista took out a box cutter from her jacket and slashed Colleen's stomach, hands, and Colleen was still fighting.
Well, Colleen tried to run away, and that really infuriated Krista. And Krista and Daryl knocked her down and drug her back. Then she started kicking her.
Then Krista took out a small meat cleaver. The night was far from over. Looking back, Krista now sees that she was punishing Colleen for her own misfortunes.
I knew exactly what I was doing. Everything that I did that night, I knew what I was doing. And I think I was taking things out on her that had happened to me years ago.
After cutting Krista with the meat cleaver, she passed her box cutter on to Daryl. He cut a pentagram into her chest.
Here is a young woman who must have gone through absolute hell. And I can't imagine anybody going through that, and I can't imagine enduring that as she did for that long.
Krista and her gang toyed with Colleen like a cat with a mouse. They let her get up and beg for her life before viciously toying with her some more.
At one point they said that she told them, just let me go, I'll not say anything. And they said, you know, we can't do that. You know, we've already done stuff to you.
The attack seemed to last for a lifetime. Krista and Daryl were simply not done with Colleen.
For 45 minutes, she had cut her. She cut her throat. She made that comment, the die. And so she took a large piece of asphalt that was discarded on the side of the road She made 5 strikes with that piece of asphalt, and finally she said, I want to see her brains flow. And she, with all her might, hit Colleen in the head and cracked her skull, and gray matter did spill from Colleen's head.
If this isn't dark enough already, Krista took a piece of Colleen's skull as a trophy. After hiding Colleen's body in the bushes, the 3 returned to the campus. Krista was proud of herself. The next day, she would show the skull piece to people on campus. So, when Colleen's body was found, the police were positive who they had to arrest. Soon enough, Krista, Tadaro, and Shadala were all in custody. The police were shocked at how jolly Krista was, and how willing she was to give them all of the details of the gruesome murder she had just committed.
During the interview, she's very giddy, laughed, very cooperative. She wanted to tell us all about it, but she was giddy. It was a happy thing for her. It was the greatest thing ever, and I've never seen anybody else like that, like her, actually.
News of this event shocked the whole town, and soon enough, the whole country. How could an 18-year-old do this to another 18-year-old?
It's really a slaughter, and that's not a word that I'd use lightly, but it was a slaughter. This victim is pleading for her life. She's trying to run away. She's saying, if you let me go, I won't do anything to put you in trouble.
Nothing convinced Krista and Tadaro to stop. In fact, the more Colleen pleaded for her life, the more violent the two would get. It's the stuff of nightmares that no one had thought was even possible from a bunch of teens.
It did not ever once enter my thoughts that Krista was involved in that murder. Once I found out that's what had happened, I still couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it for years.
Of course, how could your own daughter torture someone like this? Krista was the first to get arrested, and she had a reason behind telling the police everything from the get-go.
I was the first one they arrested, the first one they interviewed. And I thought that if I went in there and told him that I did every single thing that happened up there, that Tadaro and Shadala would just get to walk out of there and they wouldn't worry about them anymore because they had the real killer.
When a psychiatrist spoke to Krista, their conclusion was that Krista's profile matched the one of a regular serial killer. Luckily, she was caught the first time. Perhaps, unsurprisingly, the police arrested Shadala and Tadaro as well. Shadala, who had only been the group's guard dog, testified against Krista and Tadaro. She got off with probation. Krista and Tadaro were charged with murder. Tadaro was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As for Krista, Colleen's mother, May, expressed her grief after her trial.
I would like to see her killed and not go on living with taxpayers' money paying for her to live in jail to get an education.
Indeed, in March 1996, she was sentenced to death. She was the youngest woman to be sent to death row in the U.S. at the time. During her trial, Krista kept smiling, giggling, and sending notes to her mom. She was just as giddy as she was when the police caught her over a year before.
Crystal kept looking back, laughing and joking, sending notes to her mom, sending notes to her lawyer, just laughing away.
However, Krista began to cry when she heard her own confession she gave about the 45-minute long. When she realized the brutal reality of her daughter's deeds, Carissa tried to defend her in front of the jurors, saying that she had been a bad mom and it was partially her fault.
Her mom took the stand and said, and it sticks in my mind today, I was a terrible mother. I was a terrible mother. She tried to show the jury, hey, some of this is my fault.
If there's any one thing that I could change if I went back, would be that I would have spent more time with my children.
But no matter Carissa's words, Krista had done what she had done. She was the first woman sentenced to death since 1837. But neither the judge or the prosecution could shake off the gruesome details of this murder.
I've never been in the presence of anyone I thought was pure evil, but to me she's pure evil.
If Carissa still argues that Krista was a sweet girl beneath everything, this is what Krista wrote to Tadaro after her trial. You see what I get for trying to be nice to that? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more. And they fry me. Krista showed no remorse for her murder and signed the letter, Lil Devil. To this day, Krista awaits her execution by electric chair. As of 2022, she's 46 years old. While May still pushes for an execution date, Krista insists that she doesn't think she should be punished in this way.
I think I deserve to be in here for the rest of my life. I do, I know I do. I know I don't deserve to be out walking around with everybody else in normal society. I did something horrible that is unacceptable, and I realize that. But I don't deserve to die for the actions of 3 individuals.
In 2002, after trying to another prisoner for attacking her friend, Krista asked the judge to speed up her execution. She wanted to get out of that cell, even if it meant dying. Then, 3 weeks after her scheduled execution, she changed her mind and made an appeal. She is still on death row, but with no set date. Krista spends 23 hours a day in a cell by herself. For 1 hour every day, she gets out into another space where she can walk about and interact with a few inmates. She will never get a peace of mind. What she did will torture her forever. Meanwhile, Colleen's family will never get closure either. Losing someone in such a horrific way haunts you forever. And that is the truly upsetting case of Colleen Slemmer. They seemed like a perfectly normal couple with dreams of raising a family together. But when the baby came knocking, the new mom realized that she was not ready for it. And what happened next shocked everyone. This is the shocking case of the woman who said she murdered her baby and threw him in the trash. But did she really do it? Let's find out. Elizabeth Johnson and Logan McQuarrie met and started dating in 2007. They had a relatively happy life and were very excited to start a family. However, that changed when Elizabeth realized she was pregnant. She started getting mood swings and was unsure whether she wanted to become a mom. One time she would be elated, and another she would get extremely depressed and say that she didn't want the baby. On May 3rd, 2009, a beautiful baby boy with the most amazing blue eyes was born, and they named him Gabriel. Now, Logan probably thought that when the baby came, Elizabeth's motherly instincts would kick in, but sadly, that didn't happen. In fact, things only got worse. She started having really bad outbursts where she would destroy the house by tearing up clothes and a couch with a large knife before demolishing the baby's bed, smashing the TV, and breaking the windows. And when Gabriel cried, Elizabeth would reportedly shout at Logan, telling him to shut that damn baby up.
Whenever he would cry, she would go in the other room and leave him in a different room so she didn't have to hear it.
As things got out of hand, Logan became concerned for his son and thought that the only way to keep him safe was to break it off with Elizabeth and go away with his son. However, as you might have already guessed, Elizabeth did not take this news well. At first, she told Logan that he couldn't leave her, but then changed her mind and told him to go and take Gabriel with him. So on December 8th, 2009, Logan took his son and left. But an hour later, Elizabeth called the cops and said that Logan had kidnapped her child. And since they were not married and Logan did not have parental rights over Gabriel, he was forced to return him. That was the last time he saw his son. The next day, Elizabeth called and asked him to sign for their son to be adopted. Logan completely refused and went to court to ask for full custody of Gabriel, stating, "She has said several times in the past that she doesn't want the baby. She yelled and screamed at him when I would go to work. When I would go to work, I would put the baby in his room, and when I would come home 5 hours later, he would still be in the room with no changed diaper and crying." But the judge thought that Logan was just being mean, which actually happens a lot in custody battles where one partner lies about the other to get custody. So the judge thought that these two could work it out and gave them shared custody. Unfortunately, that was a big mistake. Now, when the judge awarded Elizabeth and Logan shared custody, Logan was meant to have Gabriel with him for Christmas. He was super excited about this and was looking forward to his son's first Christmas. However, on December 20th, 2009, when he went to pick Gabriel up from Elizabeth, he was shocked to find they were not there.
No answer at the door. Looked in the windows, all the dresser drawers were open, there was no clothes in them.
Logan panicked and ran to the police to report his parental time being denied, but the cops said that they could not do anything until Elizabeth was located. So it was up to Logan and his family to try and find Elizabeth and Gabriel. But days went by without success.
And then, on December 28th, Logan received a very disturbing text message saying, "You will never find me. I'm already boarding a plane out of the country. When I'm safe, I'll email you the exact location of dead Gabriel's little blue body, if the garbage don't come first." Logan was completely horrified. He immediately called the number, and when Elizabeth picked up, she confirmed what she had just written.
You did not hurt Gabriel. It's because I suffocated them. I'm almost out and I suffocated them and he turned blue. And I put them in a paper bag and I put them in the trash can.
At this point, Logan was shaking with horror. He didn't know whether to believe her or not. He hoped that Elizabeth was just lying, but what if she wasn't?
I didn't know if I wanted to believe it or not. It scared the crap out of me.
This was actually not the first time that Elizabeth had claimed to have hurt Gabriel. At one point, there was even an entire investigation about it, but at that time, Elizabeth was just bluffing and had said it to hurt Logan during a fight. After the call, Logan decided to go to the cops and tell them everything that Elizabeth had said. And investigators immediately started to search for Elizabeth and baby Gabriel. They found out that Elizabeth had gone to San Antonio with Gabriel, where some witnesses said they saw her and Gabriel when they stopped for gas.
He had him wrapped in a blanket and they were both in pajamas, as I said. And I just told he had little boogers and I just said, "Oh, he's so cute."
A few days later, she got a bus to Florida without Gabriel. She was later arrested in Miami on December 30th. When the police asked her where her son was, Elizabeth changed her story and claimed that she had given him up for adoption. She said that she met a couple in the park in San Antonio and just handed them the baby. How crazy is that? But it's about to get even crazier. According to Elizabeth, she had no idea where her son was because she knew nothing about the couple that took him. She said that she met them in an underground adoption agency and arranged to meet at a park on December 27th. That's the day before she sent the chilling message to Logan. When investigators asked her why she sent the message, she said that she did it to get back at Logan and make him miserable. Now, according to the experts, San Antonio is actually known for being the center point of unlawful adoption agencies. And one of the hotels where Elizabeth stayed while there also happened to be near one of these agencies. And also, when Elizabeth was arrested, she was wearing very expensive ring, which she didn't have before going to Texas. This made Logan and his family believe that she may have given the baby away in exchange for money. But still, what if she had told the truth the first time and the baby was actually dead? Investigators searched dumpsters, parks, and landfills in Texas, digging through a ton of garbage in an attempt to find any trace of baby Gabriel, but found nothing. They looked at all the hotels that Elizabeth had stayed at, but couldn't find any evidence to show that Gabriel had been hurt. During their investigation, police found out that Elizabeth had been talking to a couple in Scottsdale called Tammy and Jack Smith about adopting Gabriel. Apparently, Tammy and Elizabeth met for the first time in August 2009 at Boston's Logan International Airport. According to Tammy, she saw Elizabeth crying with a baby in her arms and went to inquire what was wrong. Elizabeth told her that she was not ready to be a mom, and since Tammy and her husband were always looking to adopt more children, they offered to take Gabriel. After this meeting, Elizabeth and Tammy kept in close contact, and when she and Logan broke up, she took the baby to Tammy and started the adoption process. Tammy told the police that Elizabeth had given her temporary custody and signed over power of attorney, but their plans to adopt Gabriel fell through when Logan refused to sign the papers. Tammy was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit custodial interference and forgery. The prosecutor said that Tammy forged her cousin's name on court documents, suggesting that he could be Gabriel's father when she knew that it was not true. Tammy defended herself, saying that she was only helping Elizabeth fill out the adoption paperwork.
I was just basically writing the stuff that I knew, like kind of repetitive, her name, the baby's name, Logan's name.
Tammy was later found guilty of the charges and was sentenced to spend only 30 days in jail, followed by 3 years of probation. This light sentence really infuriated Elizabeth, who was facing up to 27 years in prison for kidnapping and custodial interference. She even went ahead to write a scathing letter to the judge expressing her enragement, saying, and I quote, "I can't accept how lightly you sentenced Tammy Smith. 30 days in jail? 3 years of probation? How could you? Are you mad? Blind? Deaf? Dense? How gutsy is that?" Can you imagine the judge's reaction when he received the letter? She actually dared to question a judge when her case was just about to appear in court. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. And her trial did not go without some drama. As one witness was testifying, Elizabeth suddenly started crying loudly, interrupting the entire proceeding.
Ms. Johnson, I want to give you some time, so I want you to take some time. And if you need to step out, you can.
The trial went on for 2 days, and Logan and his family came in to testify against Elizabeth and the pain of not knowing what she had done to baby Gabriel. Logan could barely hide his tears as the recording of Elizabeth claiming to have hurt her son was played in court. When she was given a chance to speak, Elizabeth shocked everyone when instead of defending herself, she actually apologized for causing everyone pain and said that she deserved the worst.
It's unbelievable, and it's not really anything I can say for myself because I'm sitting there and I'm seeing it all. And I would convict myself.
She maintained her story that she gave Gabriel away to a couple in Texas, saying that she wanted him to have a better life than she had growing up. In the end, Elizabeth was found guilty of unlawful imprisonment and custodial interference. The jury could not reach a verdict on the kidnap chargings, which was the most serious count against her, and would have earned her a more than 20-year sentence. Instead, she got 5 years in prison, which was ruled as time served. The judge could have given her 9.5 years, which was the maximum penalty for her charges, but he took into account her troubled childhood and mental instability. Apparently, Elizabeth grew up in 5 different foster homes before the age of 10 because her mom was unable to take care of her and her brother. And when she was just 12 years old, her dad died of liver cancer. Logan and his family were furious about the light sentence and felt that Elizabeth deserved a heavier sentence so she could tell the truth about Gabriel.
I think the main thing I'd probably say is just flat out tell me the truth. That's all I want to hear.
While Logan was dying, not knowing what happened to his son, Elizabeth was moving on with her life as if nothing happened. She moved to New Mexico, changed her name to Joanna, dyed her hair, and even got married. But citizens were not going to let her go so easily, and they tipped the cops about her whereabouts. She was arrested again for violating her parole because she left the state and got married without notifying the authorities. However, she was only in jail for 20 days before being released again. And just when we thought we'd heard the last of Elizabeth, in May 2021, just hours before Gabriel's 12th birthday, Elizabeth posted a picture of herself, very pregnant, in a bikini. And you can imagine everyone's reaction. Logan's family was especially furious to see her having another baby, while the first one was still missing.
It doesn't seem right that she can go on with her life and she can be having another child when Logan is still wondering where Gabriel is.
Meanwhile, the search for Gabriel continues, and every year authorities release an age-progressed image of what he would look like if he's alive. They've received and followed up on multiple tips, but none of them have panned out. Logan, who's now married with 3 children, says he's not giving up on his firstborn.
I want to believe that he's out there and he's alive and well somewhere. I want to find him and I want him to be a part of my family.
What do you think about this case? Did Elizabeth really give baby Gabriel up for adoption? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section.